Imagine a force of nature, a sudden, terrifying storm that appears on the horizon, strikes with devastating fury, and then vanishes back into the sea. For decades, that's what the Vikings were to the coasts of Britain, Ireland, and Francia. They were the lightning raid, the scream from the fog. They came for portable wealth, silver, slaves, relics, and then they were gone. But what happens when the storm doesn't recede? What happens when it decides to stay? I'm Ibnul J. Farabi, and this is Empire Builders, the rise and fall of civilizations. Today, we're on the muddy banks of the River Liffey in Ireland, around the year 841. The Vikings have been raiding here for 40 years. But this year was different. This year, they built something called a Longphort. It's a compound word, long meaning ship, and port meaning fort. It was a fortified, defensible harbor for their ships. And with this simple, brutal act of construction, everything changed. The Longphort was the moment the Viking raider looked at a piece of land and thought, mine. Think about the logistics. A raiding party lives on its ships. It's a hit-and-run existence. But a Longphort requires a different mindset. You need to secure the perimeter. You need to store supplies for the winter. You need to defend a fixed position. The Longphort at Dublin, and others like it at Cork, Limerick, and Waterford, became more than just safe harbors. They became nuclei. Around these wooden walls, a trading settlement would sprout. The ships that once only carried warriors away with plunder now stayed put, and began to bring in goods from a vast network. Furs from the north, silks from the east, wine from the south. The raiders had become merchants. The predators had built a den, and from that den, their relationship with the land and its people transformed utterly. Before the Longphort, a Viking's interaction with the Irish kingdoms was a violent transaction. Afterwards, it became politics. They were now a permanent faction on an already fractured chessboard. Irish kings would ally with Viking leaders against other Irish kings. Vikings would fight other Vikings. They intermarried. They adopted Christianity, sometimes. They started to issue coinage in Dublin, a sovereign act. The Longphort created a stake in the game. When you have a fort, a warehouse, a house, you have something to lose. You have a reason to negotiate, to treaty, to build not just walls, but a society. This transition is one of the most fascinating patterns in history. We see it with the Normans, descendants of these very Vikings, who went from mercenaries to rulers in Sicily and England. We see it with the merchant adventurers of the East India Companies, who started with trading posts and ended governing empires. The Longphort is the prototype. It's the first, crude seed of colonial settlement. It begins with military necessity, a safe place to keep your boats, and evolves, almost inevitably, into an economic and political engine. The Vikings didn't arrive in Ireland with a grand civilizing mission. They arrived for wealth. But they discovered that the most reliable wealth wasn't in the monastery's treasury. It was in controlling the river, taxing the trade, and owning the land. It makes me think about my own journey, from Bangladesh to this concrete Longphort of New York City. I didn't come as a raider, of course, but as a builder. Yet the core human impulse isn't so different. You arrive in a new place. First, you secure a foothold, an apartment, a network, a job. That's your Longphort. You fortify it. And then, if you choose to stay, you begin the slow, complex work of putting down roots. You transition from passing through to belonging. You negotiate with the landscape and its people. You build. The Vikings in Ireland remind us that empire building often starts not with a crown, but with a dock and a wooden wall. It starts with the decision to stop sailing away. For Empire Builders, I'm Ibnul J. Farabi. This episode was produced by Light Knot Studios. Find our full archive and the story of how we build these narratives at https://www.lightknotstudios.com.